Good evening, everybody. We are so excited to host today our webinar, and we continue a series of Thursday webinars as usual, as a tradition of the English Without Borders project. And today we are very happy to host our wonderful speaker, Maiko Hata. She is one of the best experts in the field of teaching to people with disabilities. And right before we get started, let me just give a big hello to our speaker, Maiko Hata. Hello, Maiko. So nice to see you. And thank you very much for joining today's webinar. And let me just give you a brief introduction about Maiko Hata. So Maiko Hata, she will be talking today about universal design of learning for students with disabilities. Maiko Hata serves as an early childhood special education specialist at Early Childhood Cares at the University of Oregon. After completing her master's degree in TESOL, she has taught and advised thousands of international students. And while doing so, she realized many of her students shared stories that sounded like undiagnosed disabilities, which led her to work on the creation of the TESOL Interest Section, supporting students with disabilities, which she chaired. She later completed her second master's degree in special education and has been serving students with special needs. She has over 20 years of experience teaching and advising international students, as well as project management in the field of English as a second language. In addition, she has an extensive teacher training and leadership experience. Maiko, so happy to see you today. And now let me just tell you that we have so many participants who are watching us on Facebook Live, and people are also joining us on Zoom, and they will be asking you questions. So after your presentation, we'll pass to the Q&A session, and we will vocalize their questions. So thank you very much. And dear participants, please put your questions in the chat box, and those who are joining us from Facebook, put your questions in the comment box. We'll be passing them to our speaker. Maiko, welcome, and now the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nasiba, on English Without Borders, for having me today. I'm so excited. This is my passion, talking about how we can support students, especially learning English with disabilities. So I'm really excited. Let me start sharing my screen so that I can get started. Okay, yeah. And let me put it in the slideshow. Loading right now. Nasiba, can you see it okay?
Not yet.
Yes. Oh, not yet. Okay,
not
let
yet.
me try it again.
Now we can see that, yeah.
That is so strange. Let me try that again. There's always those tech little glitches, and without those, it's not a webinar, right? So hold on.
Yes, now we can see that.
Right? Yeah, it was very strange. Presenter view, slideshow, and I might have to do a little trick again. Hold on. New share, and I go to Microsoft. How about now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, now we can get started. So thank you so much for joining me today. So we will be talking about universal design for learning for working with students with disabilities. My name is Maiko Hata, and my email address is right there. And oh, hold on. Oh, okay. So let's start with my self-introduction a little bit. I am originally from Japan, and that's me in traditional kimono. And I was always interested in learning about different parts of the world. So I went to California to study how to be a good English teacher like TESOL. And that's why I ended up staying. And along the way, like Nasiba just introduced me, I realized many of my students might have had undiagnosed or disabilities that they didn't even know about. So I started learning about it. And I actually am working with children and families who experience disabilities right now. And I live in Eugene, Oregon, and that's my family. So, and if you don't mind sharing in the chat a little bit, I would love to hear about you, because why are you here today? What, like, and also, how would you define disability? Like, what is the idea of disability for you? Because that is very different from different parts of the world, right? In Japan, it's perceived a little differently from how we define disability in this country. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts might be, and also what percentage of the world population live with disabilities. If you don't mind sharing one of the question or one of the answers for one of the questions, that will help me really learn about where you're coming from. So I put my example. I want to help my students with learning disabilities, and I have autism and get unpredictable migraine headaches. So that's very hard for me. And these have definitely contributed to me wanting to work with students with disabilities. So Nasiba, can we wait for like a little bit so that we can see if we get any participants to share their thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. Let's wait. Let's give them some time, and
Okay,
I can also just start with myself.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm here today because your topic is very interesting to me, and I would like to explore the possibilities to enlarge my knowledge. And for me, disability, just the perception that we usually put some restriction in our mind, and we think that there's something that we can do within our ability, and there are something that we cannot do, and that kind of restriction usually just keeps us in the cage and does not let us to think out of the box.
Yes,
So
that is great.
and
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Nasiba.
yeah, and let me maybe I'll be some kind of incorrect with the percentage of the population who live with
Wait,
disabilities. Yeah, in Tajikistan, but um, but I think that uh, around let's say 10%, up to 10% of the population in Tajikistan, they have some kind of disability. So including physical disabilities and some mental disabilities as well.
thank you so much, Nasiba, for sharing that. And yes, I would love to hear from you if you don't mind. And we won't share your name, so just feel free to share a little bit in the chat if you don't mind. That'd be great.
Okay, Michael, we have a couple of people who already has written
Okay.
in the chat box. One of
Please.
them saying, I'm here today, Marhabo, because I work with kids. I teach them English, and I'm having a project for kids with disabilities.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Another person is saying, so Zebo Nabidjonova, she's joining from Facebook, and she says like, she wants to improve my teaching experience.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is great because it's actually a pretty big portion of the population. So it's very important to remember this population. So let me actually go to the next slide. So actually it's 15% of the world population who that World Health Organization estimates to have a disability, some form of disability. And when we think of disability, we often think of physical disability, one of the disability category that Nasiba just talked about. So we will think about people who might be a wheelchair rider or mobility challenges, but there are so many different types of disabilities as well. So let me, oh, okay. So about, hold on. Yeah, so about 15% of the world population experience disability, and their disability types are very different. It includes physical disability like brain injury. I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes a little bit here. Brain injury, cerebral palsy, and such, and mental disability that Nasiba mentioned as well. So that would be things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, intellectual disability that affects learning and problem solving. And sensory, when we say sensory, we talk about blindness, low vision, deafness, and such. So about 11% of the undergraduates at US universities actually report disability. So that's pretty high. And it's very interesting because most self-reported disabilities are actually not physical disabilities. They're learning disabilities, ADD or ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and mental illness such as anxiety and depression. So I was always fascinated to learn these numbers because it's not what you think it is, right? So we have to really pay attention to this population as well. And hold on, let me go to the next slide. And when we talk about disability, it's a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder full and effective participation in society. So what does that mean? Like Nasiba just mentioned, it doesn't always mean that what we see in a person, oh, the person has a disability. That's not always the case. It's often the case that the environment present the challenges for the people with disability. So if we remove the barriers from the environment, the learning and the living for those with disabilities become extremely doable. It's almost like disabilities doesn't exist. It doesn't stop them from joining the classroom or joining the world, right? So and this is it. I like this definition so much because this is what I want to help teachers do, right? So let me, and it gives you a starting place, like what can I do to remove the barriers from my environment that I present as a teacher so that students can fully participate. Okay, I get so excited about this. And all right, so let's talk about universal design, because universal design is one of the best ways that we can work with students through to remove those barriers. And the definition of universal design is, you can see that the design that can be used by all people without the need for adaptation. So I chose this picture with Japanese so that you don't know what it is, right? So why are there little dots on the bottle, on the green bottle, and no dots on the yellow bottle? Share in the chat why these bottles can be a good example of universal design. What do you think the bottles are? What are they? Can you, it's kind of vague questions, so it might be a little difficult to guess. But if you can think of any reason why they might be a good example of universal design, I would love to hear. And any other example of universal design that you can think of, I would love to hear. I'll wait for a little bit. And Nasiba, let me know if you see anybody sharing in the chat. Or yeah, I'll just wait. Waiting is hard for me sometimes because I get so excited. What are the bottles? What are these bottles for? And why can these bottles be good examples of universal design? And can you think of any other example of universal design? I'll give you one example: elevator, not escalator, not stairs, but an elevator or ramp. That can be a good example of universal design because you think of mobility issues. You usually automatically think about people who use wheelchair. But as you get older, you can't move your feet as high as you used to. So that's for older generation. When I had my child, when I have my two children, but strollers in Japan, in the States, it's easier, but in Japan, strollers, not too many people would help you. And there's always stairs. And I'm like, my baby is sleeping. I don't want to take him out because he's going to wake up. And how am I going to carry my stroller up the stairs? So it's for different population.
Yeah. Okay, we have a number of
Great.
options. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. Zinatmo is saying maybe one person is disability and another, so one bottle resembles person with disability and another one is a person who is physically healthy. That's one option. Another option is that green bottle is a disabled child that has a lot of barriers. Mehri is saying that maybe someone is deaf and he or she will count the dots. The dots. Another one is saying blue bottle, it has lots of opportunities. And there is one more. Bottles are example of human capacity. Blue one is a perception of our capacity, while yellow is our unlimited capacity.
That is just amazing. Thank you so much. I never even thought about that. See, this is why I love doing what I do, because I get to learn so much from all the teachers that I work with. So thank you. And by the way, this is upload in American Sign Language. So every time I do this, I'm doing this without the sound. But anyway, so let me just tell you, these are shampoo and conditioner bottles. And you say, oh, now it makes sense, right? Because if you're blind and if you're taking shower, you don't know which one is a shampoo bottle. Every time you have to flip it open and try to smell it. But if the shampoo bottle has dots, you know, okay. And who else does it help? It helps people who don't read your language, right? If you just immigrated from a different country, you don't know which one is shampoo. But once you remember that, you don't need to know. Little kids who don't read yet, they can feel it and they can know, oh, this one is a shampoo. Because, or if you're like getting, your eyes are getting old, like my eyes, you can't see well without your glasses. So this is just one of the examples how universal design doesn't just help with people with disability, but people with different walks of lives. Okay, but I love the analogy about like how people perceive disability as, because we have so much to offer. right? I have a disability and I have autism. Some people say that's a disability, and it is a disability, but it affects me in certain ways, but not in other ways. So I feel like my life is full. Okay. And so I talked about this already, so sorry. I'm gonna skip it. And this is interesting. Okay, so at the universities, all the top 3 reported disabilities are invisible. And in the United States, you don't even have to report it. So if the students don't share, or if the students don't know they have a disability, we have to be the one who's doing the detective work. How can I help them? And okay, I'm going backwards. That's why. All right, so universal design helps students with apparent disabilities, physical disabilities. You can see immediately, oh, she has some kind of disability. Or students with non-apparent disabilities like anxiety, depression, ADHD, learning disabilities, and other students like traditional and non-traditional students. When we say traditional and non-traditional students, it's important to remember many of us as English teachers were good students, right? Quote unquote, good students who did well with lecture classes, who do well in webinar classes, who do well in traditional written tests. But everybody has different ideas. Everybody learns different ways. Is it fair for us to just give them traditional written tests when their strength is not writing? We have to think about how can we make my learning environment fair for my students? That's how I see universal design. Okay. So universal design has 3 components: multiple means of representation. These are kind of big words, but it just means you have to give learners different ways to learn information. Different ways, okay? So what that means is when I present, I talk about everything that's on the slides. The slides have everything that I say. And some people say, oh, that's too much. You're talking about it. Have you ever seen TED Talk? TED Talk. TED Talks are like just picture and people just talking, 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 talking. And I keep thinking, that's not fair. I need more visual information to understand. So I'm giving you verbal information. So you are listening to it and you are looking at it because I'm giving you the visual. And then this will be available as slides later. So you can go back and look at it if this is too fast or if you are not feeling well right now. That's the third way, right? And I'm trying to interact with you so you can really engage and process the information. That's the fourth way, at least, right? So you have to give information in different ways. And so number 2, multiple means of expression. How can they show you what they know? So provide learners with different ways for showing what they know, right? Because if you're like, I often get a little sad when I see teachers or when I remember teachers who would test their listening comprehension by writing. Is that really testing their listening comprehension, or is that really testing their writing? right? So there's a mismatch. And if I'm not a good writer, but I know the grammar points, can I talk about it instead of writing about it? Okay, so you have to give different ways to show what you know. And the third point, multiple means of engagement. As teachers with experience in this room, I know you all know this, that in order for the class to be interesting, you have to talk or you have to present something that's interesting. And if it's not interesting, make it interesting somehow. It's not fair for them to not be interested. You can learn. I'm not gonna. My husband loves bikes. He always did bicycles, like road bikes, mountain bikes, Tour de France. I am not interested at all. He's been doing this for 20 years. I haven't learned anything about bikes because I'm not interested. I don't care. So make sure that the content you're presenting, they would care about it. Okay, let me see. Did I forget anything? I don't want to miss anything because for many of you, I will not see you. And I just want to make sure I share enough so that you can take it into your classroom and help your students. And okay, let's go to the next one. So as I talked about this, you know what, let me go back. Nasiba, are there any questions or thoughts that you don't mind sharing so far?
Uh, so it's actually, some people are extending their message of gratitude to you because of your topic is they are enjoying your topic, and some people has already shared their thoughts about the bottle you shared with us, the bottle
Thank
pictures.
you. Thank you. When I do this, I try to think of the students behind all of you that, can benefit from you. So that's great. Thank you. All right. So this is the three aspects of UDL that we'll talk about now. So multiple means of representation. I just talked about it. Provide learners different ways of learning information from sight, hearing, smell and touch can be hard, taste can be hard, but you can think of it, right? Like, I'm not sure how many of you attended Lara Ravage's presentation about summer camps. That was like a couple weeks ago, I think. And she was talking about how the experiential learning can be very helpful for students. Her example was archery, I think. And that's touching, that's smelling the environment, that's looking, that's hearing, and then thinking in, or on the target, near the target, by the target, next to the target, right? So you have to give them different channels. And yeah, and like I said, when you present information, give something to follow along, like the PowerPoint, right? Or like outline that they can fill out so that they can follow along. And oftentimes teachers get excited and like, oh, they can do everything. Give them a blank paper to write everything. That can be very hard. Can you at least give like number one, we're going to talk about disability. Number two, we're going to talk about UDL point one, multiple means of representation. Two, multiple means of expression, so that they don't have to do all the work all the time, okay? And so I'm going to go back because I wonder if you don't have to share in the chat, but that would be great too. Can you think of different ways that you can share your information in your classroom? What are some of the examples that you can think of that you might do in your class? That you might be already doing or you might do in the future? All right. I think you might have had a little time to think about. Nasiba?
Yeah, yeah, probably using visual aids, video, audio, and due to COVID, like, everybody right now on online mode, and we do lots of webinars. And in Tajikistan, because of internet connection is still high, so not so many can afford internet, but still, they can use sometimes YouTube for a kind of resource where you can find songs, some interviews, some events or something like that. So
Yeah,
could be.
great. That's a perfect example because I wanted to do video today too, but I was like, that might not work well. So I decided not to. But online engagement. And as we move to online teaching, it's more and more important to think about this because what aspects, what components of the online learning can be hard for the students, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go to examples. So lectures, learning games, music, and videos. These are not for just kids. These are for adults too. Textbooks, written textbook or audio. If you can provide audio, that would be even better. Print and electronic, then they can read and you can use text to speech. I will talk about it a little bit later so that they can read and listen because some students process it better that way. Experiential learning that Lara Ravitch talked about. Accessible website and optional readings with videos for increased background information. And you'd say, that's a lot of work. It is. Please choose your battle, as we say in English. Don't try to do everything and get, oh my goodness, universal design is so much work. It doesn't have to be. You just have to be a little mindful of what you might do. All right. Multiple means of expression. Encourage students to show their skills in different ways. So this one is a lot of fun, actually, to think about as a teacher. So for example, when I created an ongoing orientation course for my previous position, we let students choose different ways. And let's look at the examples. Let students show skills in various ways. Written, essay or letter, verbal, can they record what they know about the content and show? Visual art, mind map, like the bubbles, and technology, movie or PowerPoint. I like PowerPoint myself, so I do a lot of thinking in PowerPoint. Website, wiki, podcast. And interesting enough, many think that students with learning disabilities often do very well in like art and creativity, sports, music, and spatial knowledge. So it's good to remember, oh yeah, it's not fair for them to just do one way. Okay, so, oh, that's strange. So for example, the ongoing orientation that I just talked about at the American English Institute at University of Oregon, where I was working for, we had an orientation course about university resources and study skills. So some of the students made a poster, and the poster on the top middle, this one, was great because that was interactive. You have to open it. And that was great because their English was very basic level, but they obviously had very good sense of taste or sense of like artistic expression. Some students wrote letters and some students made videos. And it would have been great to see them work on PowerPoint or even podcast. Now we have access to different types of text. So what can we do? And the last of the 3 points, multiple means of engagement, it is the most like, yeah, of course, one. Tap into the learner's interest. Also, the second point is a little less obvious. Make expectations, objectives clear, right? Again, TED Talk, sometimes I don't understand what their talk is really about because the topic or the title is not clear. It's like, yeah, it's a little like journey. It's very nice sounding, but it doesn't give you too much information. That doesn't help. So tapping into learners' interest, pre-reading, writing activities, talk about the topic. And I know for many of you teachers, this is just a reminder because we all try to do this as teachers and mix different types of activities though, because I like videos. I like somebody explaining things to me, but some students like to talk about it with other students. Brainstorming by mind mapping alone or together. I like doing it alone. So I tend to do that with my students. But is that fair for students who like to talk about things? Discussion about the topic, reviewing structure, looking at related pictures. Do the visuals help? Certain students, they get a lot out of it. And make expectations, objectives clear. Daily goals. Many teachers write on the board, today we're going to rant about this. That is very helpful because you're like, oh, that sounds important. I should pay attention. And in special education, we do this thing called I do, we do, you do. What does that mean? Let me, oh. So I do is when teacher models. So I show you how to do the thing. And then the whole class practices together. So it's not scary. You can make mistakes and you won't be like, oh, I made a mistake because you're just doing it as a whole class. And then you do. Then the student practices it, okay? So I might have to, yeah, so I'm going back to sorry, I'm going back to the chat, the slides, a few slides back. I asked you, share in the chat, why you are here today, how you would define disability, what percentage of world population live with disabilities. And I gave you my example. So that part on the bottom, I want to help my students with learning disabilities. That part is my I do, right? And then we did we do, you do together as a chat. And you put in because I work with kids with disabilities or because I teach, students and I want to learn more. This way, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And it's important. And what do you think, Nasiba? I feel like I'm running out of time a little bit because I'm so excited. maybe,
Yeah.
maybe,
Okay. Yep.
yeah, maybe
Go ahead.
we'll skip this one for now, but you can think about this, like what one activity you do often in class and how can the activity be made more accessible through UDL? So maybe that can be your homework today. after you leave this seminar, spend 5 minutes as you prepare your dinner, as you take a shower. Yeah, I do the activity. How can I make that more UDL? Okay. Okay. And I keep doing this. Okay. And I just wanted to touch a little bit for UDL for online teaching, because like Nasiba talked about, a lot of us are teaching online. First thing that we have to do is you have to recognize that online environment can be helpful or very difficult. For example, my husband and my kids have attention ADD difficulties. It's very hard not to look at it's very hard to look at the class that they have to be working on the screen while not looking at different things. So that is very distracting. And so you have to remember, design with UDL strategies, engage the learners, present in various ways, access using their strength. Don't forget to make materials accessible. And because we will be sharing the slides, I put more links for more ideas. So you can just click later. And text to speech. I'm just going to touch on this a little bit. If you have a Macintosh or Windows, which most of the population do, it is built in. So I put the link in there on how to learn or how to. So text to speech is when you have texts like letters, words, but you want to hear it. Okay. And I also put the other way, speech to text. So when you don't want to type, when it's hard for you to write words, you can just speak to the computer and the computer will type for you. Many of you do this for texting and emailing already, but there are some links. And also,
yeah, Michael will also have a response from Sanjeev. He's saying, I assign students to help others who need help.
thank you. That is great. That is great because helping other students helps that student who's helping, and students who might need a little more support get support from other students. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great.
Thank you.
And I was just going to share quickly common accommodation. So when these universal designs don't catch all the students, and you kind of know what students might be struggling with, what else can you do? And many of these, again, can be a part of universal design. Give simple step-by-step instruction, oral and written, small amount of work, extra time for reading and writing, repeat directions, then check to see if students understood. Provide notes from lessons. Accept typed assignments for students who have difficulties handwriting, because think about it. If you have students who cannot write physically, you would not force that students to write physically. It's the same for some of the students with learning disabilities. Don't make them into their effort. Some of the students are not able to do that, okay? And attention issues, having students sit in front, away from windows and doors, in front of you, next to you, so that they cannot, wander away. It's not that they're not trying enough. Their brain is different. Use assignment notebooks. Give fewer questions on worksheet. Don't give 20 questions. Tell them, do the first 5 and let me know. Give directions out loud and in writing. Keep instructions simple and clear. Universal design, it helps everybody, okay? Mobility difficulties, time extensions, keeps coming back again and again. I hope you'll be a little more flexible, or maybe you're already flexible with time extensions for test assignments, okay? So as we wrap up this presentation, I wanted to share this cartoon because what's happening is there's a ramp on the left, so it's a slope. And could you please shovel the ramp? And all these other kids, so the worker is saying, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. So he's saying, I'm gonna do the stairs because there are more students who are going to use the stairs. But the wheelchair user is saying, but if you shovel the ramp, everybody can get in it. So that's what we want to do for the students. So thank you so much. And I just have a couple more closing slides. So now what? What do I do? So I put this, I will share it with Nasiba, that this presentation, and I also put more resources on my website. And the password is GOEWB exclamation mark. And if you're, so you, Nasiba, maybe you can put it in the chat for them to access this website. And if you're a TESOL member, please join supporting students with disabilities. And one more, and here's my information, and I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. Oh, should I, Nasiba, should I keep this screen open?
It's okay. We can put it in the chat box, and right after this presentation, we will post your presentation on our website, and people can have easy access to your presentation.
Sounds
Sorry.
great.
And yeah, and right now we welcome. So thank you, Maiko, for a wonderful presentation. I mean, just it gave us a glimpse of what is universal design, learning and UDL, and of course, just we welcome more opportunities to have broader understanding of UDL, and also just to better understand that how we can make that part of our teaching, taking into consideration global issues. And right now I encourage our participants on Facebook.
Oh, I can't.
Oh, sorry. To ask their questions. Sorry, to ask their questions. And now we move to Q&A section of the webinar. So we have a number of questions here, Maiko. So get ready. We understand that you are excited and a little bit got tired, but the questions are of a very great interest. So one of the questions is, do taste and smell have any connection with learning, with UDL? Probably.
So one of the research-based practices in special education is called multi-channel learning. So you want to present it from different angle. So when I taught, you know how like some certain smells, like maybe a perfume your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend used to wear, is like, like you smell it and it just vividly recalls your memories of that person, right? So I wanted, it does actually, it does. And taste, I haven't practiced too much, but smell, I was teaching children with some with disabilities unit about forests and owls. So I collected forest materials from around my house, and like we took turns smelling it and talk about different types of like trees or birds. And I think it does help. And there, yeah, and there's research to it. So if you're talking about different types of food or different types of different places in the world, it is always fun to introduce some taste and smell, I feel like.
Thank you. So another question is, how do you teach a language for students with learning disability? And what
Hold on a second.
challenges have you had so far, and how did you overcome them? Hello? Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, your voice gets stretched out a little bit, and
Hello?
maybe you can type it in the chat, or maybe I can look at it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Michael?
Yes, now I can hear you. Oh,
Hello? Michael?
yes. Yes, you're going in and out a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. Oh, all right. And now you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. How do you teach a language for students with learning disability? And what challenges have you had so far? And how did you overcome them?
So first thing, yes, there are many challenges that come with learning disabilities and teaching students with learning disabilities, especially because we teach, or you teach, I don't teach English anymore, but you teach English. And one of the things that I have done in the past for this one student is that he was not going to pass if he had to handwrite an essay. He was in another teacher's class, but I was helping him. And because he does not spell words like we would expect them to. So we ended up getting an official accommodation so he can use speech to text. So he ended up talking his essay and he got the best score in the class. And it depends on the students, right? I keep talking about UDL, like, oh, UDL will fix everything. It will not. It's not a magic pill. So you have to really work with the students. Ask the students, like, what works for you? Like, I've noticed you're struggling with writing or like finishing test in time. Is there anything that I can do to change the environment so you can finish it? And see what the student says. And Lara Ravitch is actually great about this area. Phonics, use phonics for teaching reading and writing for students, because that's what we do in schools here for students with learning disabilities often.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So another question we have, are the teaching and learning strategies the same for adults and children by using UDL?
Yeah, depends, right? So the idea of universal design is you try to catch as many students as possible the first try. And then, like I said, UDL doesn't fix everything. So you have to learn your students first. And in the US, in special education, I create these plans called individualized education plan, because for everybody with goals and how to get there.
Mm.
And the first word is individualized, because it has to meet that each student's need. Without doing that, we're just guessing. So first, you really have to learn about the student. And yeah, and I don't know. It depends on the students. But for children, it's easier because they're willing to learn. They're like willing to try different things. And as long as you present it in a fun way, they'll do it, like writing letters in a bag with pasty, flour, and or like Play-Doh. You make letters with Play-Doh. Would adults do that? I don't know. It might feel offensive. It might be like, oh, what do you think I am? A child? You don't want to do that. But kids, they're like, oh, yay, Play-Doh. So you have to be mindful of that. But other than that, I would say go for it. Talk with the students, see what they think.
Excellent. I just, I can also share my own experience long ago when I was teaching at the US university. By the end of the semester, I discovered that one of my students had this learning disability, and I was completely surprised because, like, from appearance, you can't guess, it's impossible because, the student is actively participating, trying to do his best by learning and everything. And then my coordinator asked me to develop an individual test for him, and so we gave him just extension to do his test and also to submit his test. And that was the first time I realized that back in Tajikistan, this is something novice. Just still the teachers are struggling with that. And of course, there are so many teachers that they have students with learning disability in their class. And it's very difficult for them because they have the curriculum, they have of the students who are both who are in the same classroom, and they always just kind of struggle, to paying attention to students with disability, some of the students with disability, and also to the rest of class. And that's kind of I mean, just in teaching English particularly, lots of teachers, they still don't know how to manage all this and how to handle the situation.
Right.
So yeah, and if you can share just maybe from your own experience, just how did you do that in the past, and what are the best strategies?
Right. So thank you so much for sharing, Nasiba. I can imagine that can be a little surprising. And so that's another thing. I feel like that is very important for us to remember. One of our priorities is to make that okay, make asking for help okay, right? At the University of Oregon and many other universities in the States, in the syllabus, we have to put in if you need accommodations or help because you have disabilities, talk to your teacher before it becomes a problem, right? And we also have this disability support centers at the universities for free. And I also learned over the years working with international students, disabilities feel heavy. The word disability feels very negative, not good, kind of not good thing. Like, oh, I don't want to have disability. I don't have disability. I'm not stupid. I can do it. I'm just not trying hard enough. But if we make the environment again normalizing, like make it normal, make it okay to ask for help, or like Olympics and Paralympics, like these are different people and that's fine. And if you have learning disability, or if you think you might have this learning disability, or if you're wondering, why is it so hard for me to finish this one thing? When my classmates are done in 1 minute, I take 20 minutes and I still am not done. It's very important for them to feel safe to say to the teachers, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but can you help me? So how can you as teachers make that environment for your students. And yeah, teaching English to speakers with learning disabilities is a huge topic that I can't even go into because there are so many different layers, because we're teaching language which might require you to write certain words, right? But what if the students can't? And what is your university's policy, or what is your school's policy on that? What are procedures for helping students, other than to say, sorry, because I felt like I was doing that a lot before. That's why I started doing this. I hope that answered some of the questions.
Okay. Yes, yes. So thank you very much. We have one more last question. Can you share your work experience with disabled kids in an environment which was not designed for disabled children?
That's what I do now. I go to preschools and families' homes and talk about how can we make it more accessible. So for example, let me see if I can find this quick. This child has speech goals and communication goals, and he's in a preschool with other students. On top of that, he speaks Spanish at home, or his family uses Spanish at home. So I noticed when I went to the preschool, the students and the teachers were, of course, speaking English, which is fine, but he couldn't give his information back. It was just in, not coming out, because he doesn't know the words. But so I made this, and he can point, right? And then he can answer colors. What toys that? Mateo, what toys are you going to play with today? And then every time we talk about it, oh, what do you need? We can practice Spanish words and English words. It has both Spanish words and English words. And that actually helped his frustration quite a bit too, because he now can communicate. He doesn't have to say the word, he just can point at it. And there are so many ways. Another example is if the student is having trouble practicing or like answering questions, can the student be the last one to answer the question, right? So that he or she can hear the other students' answers and practice saying the same thing. Or how are you going to seat the student? If the student can sit well, what are the chairs that's going to work for the student? If the student's hard of hearing, what do you provide the student so that he can access the same learning environment that other students are accessing? Oh, that's a whole another day or a week of workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. So interesting, to discover completely new fields for the teachers in Tajikistan, because, well, your experience is fantastic. And this is kind of a completely new exploration for the teachers in Tajikistan.
Thank you
because,
so much for
the whole environment is just getting started to change, but so many things need to be done, in order just, to develop all this infrastructure, to develop like teachers capacity,
yes.
but, for using UDL and yeah, like, it's kind of a, as you mentioned, it's kind of, multi-level development and multi-level negotiation. Yeah, and just everything like should be focused, and most importantly, like, they should be commitment to that, and then it will work. Yes. So yeah,
thank you so much.
yeah, thank you very much, Michael. So we really enjoyed, like, your wonderful presentation. Let me remind our participants that today we hosted Maiko Hata, a wonderful speaker who talked about universal design of learning for students with disabilities. Thanks a lot, Maiko. And let me remind our participants that next week we are having another speaker. So Laura G. Holland, she will be talking about questions and questioning, classroom practice, optimal discussions, and critical thinking. And using this moment on behalf of all the attendants of today's webinar, I express our deep gratitude to you, Michael. And we do believe that we'll be having more webinars together with English Without Borders soon in the coming months as well. And we are looking forward to more collaboration with you.
Thank you so much, Nasiba and English Without Borders. This was great.